Today, we are talking about money, abundance mindset, building wealth, all of these things where we feel like we are in flow, we are receiving, and it honestly just feels really, really good. It's like we're energized from day to day because being in this place is an energized state. So, we're going to talk about what is the energy of money because I have a very unique perspective on this. Yes, I have the spiritual side of me, but I also have the business side. I actually worked in financial tech and I understand payments and the literal flow of money that changes hands when you make a payment, when investors write a check to a founder. So I'm bringing everything together to talk about how do we receive more money and release the fears that block money from coming in. Welcome to Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. I am your host, Samantha Fackler, business mentor and brand strategist. This show is about what it takes to build something in public, a business, a body of work, a brand, or a creative project so that you reach the right people. After 14 years in brand and marketing, I've seen so much confusing advice out there that tells you either need systems and rigid frameworks or intuition and manifestation vibes. And from my experience working with over 100 companies and even more clients, I find that growth is somewhere in the middle. So here we talk about the real choices of creating, showing up, and attracting the people that your work is meant for. Right now, I am very pregnant while running my company, so that journey will probably make its way into the show too. I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. Recently, I went to a Women's Wealth Summit in Arizona, and I had signed up for it 6 or 7 months ago. And when I signed up, I just knew this feels good. I want to go to this. It's about 100 to 150 women. There's everyone, there's people from all sorts of backgrounds, and we're not just talking about wealth, but we're actually talking about the movement of money today. We're talking about micropayments, agentic commerce, the women writing checks, funding different startups and funding different female-founded companies, etc. Now, this does not draw a direct line to what I do, but I just knew I want to be in this room. I want to be in these conversations because even though some of this is from my past career in corporate, there was just something about it that felt right. And as it got closer, I had certain people ask me, well, do you have goals? Are you trying to sign different clients by going? What are you trying to do? And I was like, honestly, I'm just there to show up and receive and see what happens. I don't have a strong agenda. I'm marching towards maternity leave anyways. I just feel good about this decision. And being in that room, hearing these conversations about wealth, about funding, about, again, the movement of money in the world and how that's starting to change, so many different insights came through. And so really for today's podcast, I want to pack those in for you. And alongside that, how does this affect the way that we think and feel about money? It's one of the most controversial topics, and it has come up so often in coaching, even with clients who feel like they're in an abundant state, meaning that they feel like, I've got it. I'm okay. I'm comfortable. I trust that clients or sales or whatever are going to come through. I trust that things are working out for me. Even those clients always have a moment where they feel a bit of fear and tightness, right? Because when we feel fear, our whole body tends to tighten up. We grip. And so I think there's a lot of actually fear around money that I want to talk about today. And I have certainly experienced this myself too. It's something that we're going to kind of ride the wave of throughout our entire lives. One of the biggest takeaways from the summit was just how much money there is in the world. I was sitting there at a point watching these VCs on stage talk about, how they choose different startups to invest in, different funds that they're building, how do they attract other investors to those funds, and then looking at all the companies that other people represented, because there were, attorneys from different firms or companies. There were founders of startups who are in the 8, 9, 10-figure range. And then these enterprises also that showed up that have some sort of financial tie. And I looked around the room and I thought about how much money is moving between these companies, between these hands here. And then I thought about all the moments in my life when I felt that bit of scarcity, or like, ooh, how am I going to make enough next month to pay for everything I want to? Or I thought about the moments where I've made huge goals for myself. Like I'm going to make, I remember one of my first years as an entrepreneur, I was like, okay, next year I'm making 400,000. Right. And a lot of people on the internet are like, you should be delusional and you should like have these huge goals. But what I've seen with those is that oftentimes we start to doubt ourselves because we can't reach those, because we've just created this really huge jump for ourselves and we're likely not actually going to make that jump. So it was such an interesting dichotomy to be in this room and feeling this realization of how much money there is in the world. And then also remembering these times when I felt so tight and constricted. Luckily, I have been in this space recently where I've been taking my money mindset, my wealth mindset more seriously. Seriously, as in spiritually, because those are the same to me. Really understanding, okay, how am I thinking about money right now? Because with maternity leave, that's such a massive change in how I operate and my business operates. I don't know how exactly I'm going to come back and what I'm going to offer and what's going to be a priority. And naturally, money is tied to all of these decisions. So I have had to make it a constant practice in this pregnancy to come back to trust, to come back to this abundant place of knowing I'm going to figure this out and this is going to be fine. And even as I lead up to maternity leave and maybe have less clients I'm working with, I'm still going to make enough. Everything's going to be okay. Right? And starting to change the narrative in my head. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I actually didn't need more clients because I had certain clients who naturally increased their work with me. I had one client come out of absolutely nowhere who was like, I want to work with you. Right. And I'm also attracting clients who are on the same level too, who aren't penny pinching or trying to squeeze the most out of like every single thing together, coming from this place of fear of not having enough or not getting enough. And so that's something too, right? It's like this attraction piece. It's like the energy that we have is attracting the energy on the other side. Which brings me to another big point here. And another thing I was reminded of at this Wealth Summit. Money is energy. And I have always known this because, again, I worked in financial technology. I worked for companies who had payments as their business. So I watched how many times payments changed hands between companies when you buy a coffee or when you do an Amazon haul. And it's insane. It's insane how many different institutions our money moves through and the micro pieces that happen along the way. Part of my career too was in the blockchain world. So I understand that very, very well. I actually taught blockchain technology at CSU Chico. And it is what underpins things like stablecoins, which I think everyone is going to hear more and more about over time, right? They are the stable form of cryptocurrency. So it's like the US dollar, but it's a digital form that's very secure and it's typically native to whatever platform you're using. So I'm not going to do this whole episode on stablecoins because that is a whole rabbit hole for another day. But I've seen this pattern with founders who are raising capital, and they have to psychologically and energetically open themselves up to receive that check that they're trying to land. Now they know they need it. They've scoped it out. They have hires to make, they have, huge expenses on their roadmap. But they also have to embrace what that level requires in terms of the checks they're trying to get written. So as you can see from these two things, like money is always moving. And actually, when you think about business as an exchange, right? We used to have businesses where it's like, I have eggs and you have goat milk and we're going to swap, we're going to barter. But currency came about because we needed a more unified system, especially across different regions. And then when governments got involved, obviously governments had their own money system to replace the barter system. And that's really how it's evolved today, right? Money still represents value. And so if you're giving me $500, In exchange for something that you're buying, you're getting ideally that $500 in value or more. So underneath money is energy. And that's why we talk about energy. That's why we talk about spirituality with things like money, wealth, and abundance, because it's all connected. And the last point that I want to make here for really articulating how money is energy is this one panel at the Wealth Summit where they had these investors on stage talking about how do they choose who to write a check to? Because they get pitched all the live long day, every day. They get pitched in their DMs. They get pitched in their email. They get pitched on the street the moment they say, yeah, I'm a VC or I'm an investor. How do they choose? And such a big point that these investors made were, yes, they're looking at technical things. Does this make sense from a, mathematical point of view? Do the numbers weigh out? But also, does the market, is the market there? Or is it emerging? Is the founder the right person to invest in? That was a huge part. Is the founder and the founder team the right people to invest in? Because ultimately, those investors have to trust the people running the ship in order to say, okay, we believe in you enough that we're going to give you X amount of dollars. So again, we see from this lens, money is energy, right? It's the energy you're showing up when you're pitching. It's the energy you put into the story and the market and your go-to-market and even the numbers. Numbers also tell a story. And so again, money is energy, right? It's like I want to like SpongeBob paint a rainbow and make a shirt that says money is energy. So when we talk about how we're relating to money and how we're receiving it, it is energetic. And a big question that I like to check in with myself on when stuff comes up with money is this: what do I need to release in order to receive more of? Now, this question can also be related to other ways of receiving. It can be friendships or relationships, right? What do you have to release to maybe receive more in those areas? Same thing with money. And I don't think that this gets talked about enough, because what I see in this space is that there's all these people who are like, you know, sign up for my thing to learn these abundance codes, use this abundance affirmation. I'm not saying that those are wrong, but I'm saying that those have never worked for me because they're bypassing the bigger issues, which are rooted in fear. Fear, again, is that constriction that we talked about. So, what is there? What are you gripping onto that you need to let go of? Because that creates a lot of space for wealth, money, abundance, whatever you want to call it, to come in. A lot of times we are so focused on receiving more, making more, that we don't see what we're holding on to that's preventing that from happening. And another big thing here is that a lot of people are getting in their own way, meaning they are actually confused about how they want to receive money. They say, oh, well, I have this program and I want to 10x it. Well, actually, when I talk to them and I understand more about who they are and the thing that they're running, we get to this point where we realize they actually cannot 10x that thing. They cannot hold that capacity. They can't run it at 10x what it is. So they either have to completely change it and then 10x it, or do something else. And this is really, really important. So when you think about this, get real with yourself. Like, can you actually hold that capacity? Because most people cannot, or they have something in the wrong format. An example of this is my program, The Brand Edit. It was a live program. I remember the last round, I was like, okay, I think I can have 12 people in it. But I always trust that the amount of people that show up are the exact amount of people that I should be serving for that program. And I got way less than 12, but I had enough. And actually, when I was going through it, I was like, God, if I had 12, I don't know how I'd do this. I would be so stressed. I would be way overwhelmed. It'd be way over my bandwidth. So a lot of times we're lying to ourselves, thinking that we want a certain thing or that it needs to come in a certain way, when actually we can create more flexibility greater perspective and see, actually, these are the ways that I really want to receive money. So to recap, we've talked about, there's so much money in the world. So when we catch ourselves feeling like, ooh, I don't have enough, I don't know where it's going to come from, and we get that grippy feeling, start to see if you can create some safety in the body and start to see all of the different ways that you've received money or received abundance, because that gratitude and that recognition is going to help you open up. And then 2, we talked about how money is energy and how that can look so many different ways. And then 3, we talked about how can you make space for money to come in, because sometimes it's not, I want to receive it this way and I'm going to chant this affirmation until it does happen. It's creating more flexibility and openness for it to come in the ways that it wants to come in. Because the biggest thing that I see with money is that it's not like you're not working hard enough. I know people who are busting their ass and they're not making, quote, enough. But in fact, their fears are running the show. Their fears are the ones that are making them work so hard. And they don't need to. They just need to loosen the grip, create safety, let go of some of the deep-seated fears that might be underneath the surface, and then start to see how else can money come in that feels a lot easier and more joyful. Because I know this firsthand, it is possible. You can absolutely make money in ways that feel fun and easy and in flow. And yes, you can tap into that energy of feeling like, okay, I'm in alignment with it all. It's not like I'm trying to push a boulder up a hill anymore, because that's exhausting. And lastly, I will share as a confession, one of the fears that I had to let go of was the fear of judgment around how I make money. Yes, you heard that right. Fear of judgment of how I make money. Because coming from corporate, everyone accepts the fact that you work for a company and you get a paycheck, great job, stamp of approval. But when you become an entrepreneur and you start to price things and create things on your own, there's a lot of doubt there, at least at first. And sometimes you can be afraid of, well, what are my friends or what are my colleagues going to think when they start to see my prices and what I'm offering? Or are people going to judge me if I start to make money off of, let's say, ads on YouTube or, yada, yada, fill in the blank. So I needed to do a lot of work around releasing that fear so that I could accept and receive more money through the different ways that I was offering. And even I had to see other fears underneath those, fears around that passive offers don't work, that you just put in a ton of work and then they don't do anything. That's not actually true, right? I've created passive offers that do generate revenue. So I hope this episode today gives you a little bit something new to think about. I hope it gives you a little bit of energy around this stuff if you've been feeling stuck, or it's just expanding your capacity for even more energy and flow in your life, in your business, or whatever you're building. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations like this. We're definitely going to be talking about money in the future because there's so much more to talk about. I am your host, Samantha Fackler, and you can find out more information about me and all the different things that I offer at samanthafackler.com. I'll catch you next time.